Jack Hart and several of them was doing something, and they needed some wire. I think it was electrical wire we short of or something, and had to get it before the store closed. So they gave me some money and told me where to go, and that's where they had any interstate systems around, you know, up here then. So I got to the place before it closed and got the wire, but I forgot how I got there.
So what he did, rather than to panic or run around trying to find his way, he found a taxi cab. He asked the cab driver if he knew the way to the raceway, and he did.
So I gave him a $20 bill, and I said, take me to the racetrack. He said, well, get in. I said, no, I don't want to ride with you. I want to follow you. So he brought me to the back gate of the racetrack, and I got back in time with a cab.
We thought, well, this young man shows some pretty good initiative, and so as a result, we put him out on the starting line helping out.
First year at Indy, I think we was here, I laid on the grass on my stomach to watch them see if they did wheel stands. Now, can you believe that? We used to be so strict on the car. And Ed Eaton would tell me, if they lift the wheels up before they leave, you're supposed to tell us where we can throw them out. And that didn't go too good, because, man, there's a couple times I looked back and I said, that car lifted his wheel, but I'd look at them 15, 20 crewmen back there and me laying on the ground. I thought, well, I better let that one go. But do you talk about that brawling? I never was no brawl. I just didn't like people run over me. I just didn't, you know, don't care who they was or what. I mean, I figured they put their pants on the same way I did. I thought to get along with the racers, I had to get right in the middle of them, you know, and I thought as long as I could stand up, take care of myself, that I'd get respect from them. And undoubtedly I did, so I hadn't had any problems with them.
Tommy Ivo was one of the real colorful characters in drag racing. He started out with a head start because he was well known for playing juvenile parts in the film industry. He also built some cars that were very exciting looking. Tommy was a showman right from the word go, and throughout his entire career in racing, he did an awful lot to attract attention to the sport, both from the competition standpoint and exhibition standpoint. Some of the cars that he developed were just outstanding vehicles because they were so different.
Why does everybody believe Millie, Mom? Because she's grown up?
I guess so, dear.
Well, it started when I was at the ripe old age of 3. I used to sing and dance. That's like kids nowadays play guitars. All of them play guitars. And I got a movie called Earl Carroll's Vanity. And from there, it just sort of progressed on for year after year. I did all types of mostly orphans. That continued on. I did about 200 television shows altogether and about 50 movies over a span of about 27 years. It overlapped a little bit with drag racing. When I first started racing, I took my 52 Buick out to the drag strip one day. Didn't even know what a drag race was. I took it out, ran it out to the drag strip, and happened to win a trophy. Gee, boy, this is great. An Oscar, the first time I ever ran my drag. The first time I ever ran the drag races. So I ran a stock car for quite a while. The only problem is the transmission kept falling out of the thing all the time, and I ended up taking other means to the studio. So I decided, well, I'll build a car just specifically for drag racing. That's where the Model T Roadster came up, with a short pickup bed on it, which kind of became a standard of the industry. You see a whole bunch of them around now. They make plastic models of that type of car. I took the car out, I ran it. I ran it for a whole year and was never defeated in the street roadster class. In fact, at that time, they had us limited to gasoline, which slowed things down quite a bit. And I won top eliminator with it a couple of times. We started out with a roadster, then 1 engine, then 2 engines, then 4 engines. And at that time, everyone says, wait a minute, this is getting to be a little bit on the ridiculous side. And basically, that car probably made me famous. It did more for me than anyone else for years and years and years. All I ever heard, we'd go out, we'd break the track record, we'd have the good fortune to beat Big Daddy, and everyone would say, where's the 4-engine car? 4-engine car was really unique. It wasn't just something that we put 4 engines into. There was a lot went into it. The 2 right-hand engines drove into an offset rear end, which drove the rear wheels. The 2 left-hand engines drove into a front rear end differential, which drove the 2 front wheels. The 4-engine car to me was a tremendous thing. We worked a year on the thing, and it was just, I couldn't wait until I got up in the morning and I'd work till the wee hours of the night until I just couldn't stand it anymore because it took me over.
I think one of the most important things that makes drag racing what it is, and that is innovation. Everybody puts a little bit of innovation into their cars, into the shapes of the cars, the types of the cars. They try all different sorts of things, and I think that there's a lot of the personality of the owners and the drivers that go into the cars.
During the early years of drag racing, late 1940s and early 1950s, almost all of the cars that were being used in competition were derived from other forms of racing vehicles. Everything from cast-off Indianapolis cars to midgets, sprint cars, dry lakesters, all kinds of crazy things. And during those early years, innovation came very rapidly. And the one that stands out in my mind as being the most important was one that was come up with by a former land speed record holder named Mickey Thompson. Essentially what Mickey did was to take the various components of the drag race car and rearrange them with relation to the front and rear axle so that ultimately a very strange vehicle evolved. The driver was behind the rear end, the engine was just slightly in front of the rear end, and then there was a series of chassis tubes leading up to a very light front end. What this did, in essence, was to create the first vehicle designed specifically for quarter-mile acceleration, and the Slingshot Dragster truly did revolutionize the sport at that time.
First drag race I ran into was a place called Fontana Drag Strip. It was an abandoned Air Force base, and I happened to be driving by there on my way home from the Dry Lakes, and I thought, boy, that'd be a place to run it. And I had a 29 Model A Roadster, had a 32 V8 engine in it. And we stopped by the drag strips and ran it. I think we ran something like 75 miles an hour, which was very close to the record at the time. Actually, the first all-out dragster I built was a front-engine dragster. Our big problem was that our tires were only about 4 inches wide, and we couldn't get traction from the tires. And we had 3-speed transmissions. We went through all 3 speeds and presented a problem as far as shifting was concerned. So what we had to do is put every bit of weight we could in the rear of the car with a short wheelbase. And that's the only way we get maximum traction out of the car. The Slingshot Dragster was actually a very unique thing. The first time we raced our Slingshot Dragster against somebody else, it jumped out of the hole so far. There's a fellow named Leroy Newmeyer that actually said that thing came out of the hole like a slingshot. And that's where the name got picked up. Just very innocently, somebody said it looks like a slingshot, and that's where the Slingshot Dragster was brought into effect.
Now, funny cars are a good example of what I'm talking about, this inventiveness that we see in drag racing. They first of all started out with just moving the back wheels and the front wheels forward, making the car look like it was going to tip over backwards. And other than that, it looked pretty much like a stock car. And then the next guy, well, he tried lengthening the car a little bit. And the next guy narrowed it a little bit. And another one chopped it a little bit. And they did all sorts of little funny things to it to make it a funny car. And so a funny car really personifies that ingenuity or that innovative nature that we have in drag racing. In the early 1960s, that's when these funny cars really got their start. The factories were looking for a winner, and they were pushing the racers and the builders to build a little bit better mousetrap. And so that's when the cars began to start looking funny.
Chrysler's involvement in drag racing started at a low level at the different plants somewhat. There were people at Plymouth interested in it, and quite a large group at Central Engineering Facility of young engineers who formed the Ramchargers team who were very interested in drag racing. Chrysler Corporation's interest in the racing was twofold. You have to realize that at that time there were the 55, 6, and 7 Chevrolets, which were very hot cars and achieved reputation for them, for themselves. Ford was building supercharged cars and their factory cars. And nobody knew that Plymouth and Dodge had any performance capabilities, and it was our job to get the youth involved in our vehicles. That's why we sponsored a drag racer in each of our sales marketing areas, so that area sales manager knew that man and knew what he was capable of, and he could use him to bring him into the dealerships to attract attention. And drag racing at that time was very stock oriented, and we used it as a medium to get, to restore our image to basically to the youth market. Dick Landy was one of our sponsored factory racers. He started out originally with Plymouth, oddly enough, and then we came over to Dodge when we separated out the programs. And he was very good car builder and engine builder.
Most of the racing we did at that time with Chrysler, prior to getting into the larger, more higher performance cars, was just weekend stuff. We didn't really travel much at that time. They gave us quite a bit of freedom, much more than we expected. They wanted us as much as we wanted them, let's put it that way. So the relationship worked out very well. The Monday morning thing was pretty critical. Always nervous if we didn't do well. We did well, everybody was very happy. We'd always gave back a report on the malfunctions or the things we felt we needed engineering-wise, the parts that they could help us with. In 1963, I was still racing a Plymouth, and in 1964, we switched over to a Dodge product. In the latter part of 1964, we knew the 65 cars were coming off the assembly line. They were basically hand-built cars off the assembly line. We knew they were coming. In the meantime, we took our 64 cars and modified the wheelbases, moved the front wheels forward 4 inches and moved the rear wheels forward a couple of inches to get better weight transferred. We were able to pick up an extra 100 pounds on the rear tires by doing so. And it was so promising that in the 65 cars, they modified them 15 inches wheelbase movement. And this is where the beginning of the weird-looking car came from. When we had them modified 4 inches, it was very hard to see, especially in photographs. And when we moved them 15 inches, they actually looked funny. They did not look right at all. And that's really where the name came from. We were running approximately 125 to 128 miles an hour with our 64 car. And that's on a good racetrack in good conditions. The first 2-3 weeks out during shakedowns and what have you, before we left California on our summer tour, we were running over 140 miles an hour with the car.
Well, as the factory experimental class progressed in the 65 and 66 years, it began to be a contest. Ford brought out their Mustangs with the big engines, and then very soon after that, fiberglass parts began appearing, and then I think Don Nicholson was the first one to show up with a lift-off body. And it became a contest to see who could do the most. First you went to all the wheelbase, and then we had the aluminum engine, then you got aluminum body parts, and then you began dipping bodies and steel bodies to make them lighter, and then you put some cars. By that time, of course, had gone to superchargers. There were some supercharged cars running at that time. Everybody had fuel injection with big stacks sticking out the top of the hood.
But we didn't, the National Hot Rod Association did not have a class for them. So we would make them a factory experimental class, put them in competition eliminator. They had to race handicap style, and it wasn't very fulfilling for either the racers, the factories, or the fans. In fact, it was the fans that were really pushing for an eliminator category for the funny cars. In 1970, we made a category for funny car eliminator. I'm sure glad we did.
originally built in the early 30s, and we got it in 1948. We ran it at the drags and the dry legs, and we ran it more at the drags than we did the dry legs because it was a short wheelbase car and it was pretty squirrely. But when we started drag racing it more, we found out that